Hey, here we go. Good evening and welcome to Upon Further Review, episode 12. We're well into now the sectional playoffs as 1A through 4A kicked off this past Friday night with a lot of games within Northeast Indiana and the Fort Wayne area. A lot of good games, a lot of big games that came out of that night. One of them was the game of the week on 1380 The Fan 100.9 FM that we will discuss here in a little bit. But welcome alongside Eric Dukevich. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. Welcome to Upon Further Review as we get ourselves prepared for this Friday night's sectional games. Then we bring in the 6A and 5A group. And tonight we're going to have on QB1, I call him, from Northside High School. Bohde Dickerson will join us and talk about his season up to date, a little bit about the Northside Legends and their overall team, as well as their offensive firepower that they've had. And then we'll bring in Kurt Tippmann, the head football coach, I believe still number one in 5A, the Fort Wayne Snider Panthers, and they will discuss his sectional matchup, a rematch due of their game against Bishop DeWanger. But first and foremost, I wasn't there at the General Stadium Friday night to see the Columbia City Eagles and the Wayne Generals in what I would say was an instant classic in terms of two teams that were just putting on a show when it came to offensive football.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that, we had it'd been hyped up all week and it delivered. It was one of those games where back and forth they went throughout the game, Columbia City and Wayne out at Wayne Stadium. Wayne struck first, a lot of handing off to Lamarian Nelson, a lot of just batting down the hatches and moving the pile and moving the chains and getting the end zone. And, Wayne struck first but Columbia City was able to answer time and time again and then to surge into the lead. And that fourth quarter was just so wild. Comes down to the final minute of play with Columbia City scoring and getting that go-ahead touchdown. Josh Arntz with the run to put them ahead, and then the 2-point conversion is no good. So then they had to hold on for another 13 seconds just to see how that. But it was an instant classic, and really it kind of talked about the narrative that both Jim and I talked about in the PSM pregame show on Friday. You have two teams from two different conferences that don't get to play each other with basically win or go home mentality on the line. And that really made for some great football, not just in this game, but really across Northeast Indiana last Friday night.
Well, looking at statistics of this game, and it, like you said, it delivered offensively. Wayne had 211 yards. I said it. I put out a little audio clip of kind of my thoughts and processes since I wasn't going to be joining you on the pregame show this past Friday night. But I figured, Lamarian Nelson was not going to be stopped. Now, they could contain him, but they weren't going to stop him from getting his yards, and that proved true. But Trimble had a heck of a ball game. Got to give a kid credit. 18 of 25, 247 yards. Here's a kid that 2 weeks ago put 400-plus yards on Homestead's defense. Nobody really gave him a lot of credit because Nelson was the guy that was taking all of it for the most part, and I don't mean that negatively. But Trimble was this guy that could beat you, and he about did that to the Columbia City Eagles. But when you think about Columbia City, 459 yards of rushing, their two running backs, which is about 50% of their firepower, Ethan Severs and Josh Arntz, both had over 100 yards. Severs, 183, 8.3 yard average, and Arntz, 136, 7.2 yard average. Both had 3 TDs on the night. And talking to our compadre, the voice of Northeast Indiana sports, high school sports, Brett Rump, the final drive, Columbia City basically went a very quick huddle and they never threw a pass. They ran it the complete length of the field, so to speak, to get that winning touchdown. So hats off to Brett Fox, his coaching staff, and his kids on a well-earned victory Friday night against the Wayne Generals. But more importantly, on this side of it, heartbreaking loss for Wayne. Yeah. Their kids played well. Justin Kinney had a lot of complimentary things to say in the postgame aftermath of that. And he said it was the best game he had seen Wayne play in somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years. I mean, he was
Yeah.
really complimentary and really kind of taken away about how well Wayne played.
Well, and I think that brings in, the schedule for both teams being, Wayne going through the Summit Athletic Conference and Columbia City, the NE8 champions. The schedules that both of those teams play, and that's one thing we've talked about is the SAC for a lot of those teams towards the bottom half of that league. That tough schedule gets them ready for the postseason, and it certainly did for Wayne. They just
Right.
came just a little bit short, but let's not overlook the NE8 either, because I mean,
Right.
Columbia City, after that emotional victory a week ago, the week prior over Norwell for the NE8 title, they could have had that hangover effect that really,
Yes.
once they got down to Wayne, that could have been lights out for Columbia City, but they stayed in it. They battled hard, and that's a testament to the coaching and to the players on the sidelines, and really, just that desire to continue. And I think both teams had that Friday night. It's just there's a limited amount of time in a football game, and I think otherwise we might have seen it go back and forth all night long. But big win for Columbia City as they move on. They'll host, I believe,
Yes.
DeKalb in the
DeKalb,
second
and
round, which is a surprise there. I mean, that's one team, and we'll break down a lot of the games later, but a couple surprises on Friday night. I think DeKalb was one of them. East Noble winning big up in Angola was probably a surprise in the sense of how big it was. Huntington North, a great showing by the NE8 conference across the board on Friday night that finished 6-2. And you have to keep in mind one of those games, two NE8 teams were playing each other in DeKalb and New Haven, so somebody was going to lose. So 6-2 on the night, by far the best showing of all the area conferences. Now 6A and 5A were off, so most of the SAC was idle. But that was a great start to the postseason play for teams in our area. Just looking back last Friday night, and
and the last thing here, and then we're going to get into our conversation here with Bohde. Adversity set in for Columbia City. They responded. That's what good teams do. When you face adversity in a game like that, where you have to make a play, they proved that they could make the play when it counted, and they went to the bread and butter, which was running the football. So hats off to them and the Wayne Generals on a great game. If people were out there from Whitley County, I'm sure they got a great showing, as well as the Wayne faithful. But let's bring in now, of course, quarterback from Northside High School, Bohde Dickerson, who will have his Legends facing the Anderson this Friday night out at Northside High School. And Bohde, thanks for joining us tonight. And I guess, did the week off help you relax and kind of heal up some bumps and bruises?
It definitely helped having a week off, just be able to rest everyone, get everyone healthy going into the sectionals.
Yeah. What this past week, what was most of your focus as it pertained to practice and timing and things of that nature?
Really was just rest the bodies, keep it light at practice, and
Good.
Focus on getting everyone healthy. Lifted a lot this week, and then really was just like installing the game plan, going to sectionals, getting timing for everything.
Yeah. Well, I know that this year you made the transfer over to Northside and have had a really great season thus far, over 1,800 yards passing, a phenomenal percentage completion, about 67. I round up 67%. That's the quarterback in me, always going to give that extra percentage. 25 TDs on the year and only 6 interceptions. That's a phenomenal statistic there when you look at the ratio from TDs to interceptions. And let's not forget, you're not afraid to pull the ball down and run it either. 301 yards rushing thus far on the year. Explain a little bit about your offense and Coach Johnson's fingerprint on what you guys do offensively.
The offense is awesome because we have the ability to run the ball, which I think shocked everyone, because everyone thought with me going to Northside it would be throwing the ball 45 times a game. But with how great our O-line is and the running back in Jonte, it really makes my job easy because teams have to respect the run, which opens up the pass game when you have guys like Tay, Caden Hurst, Amarion Jones, and Jalen Ellis out to catch the ball for you. Really makes it easy for me because it makes people have to respect both the pass and the run. And then if they want to stop the pass, I can just pull it and run it with my feet, which really opens up our offense.
Well, yeah, you guys do a little bit of the true spread offense, zone read and stuff. But I've said all year long, with Lambert's ability to run the football, that's made you a better quarterback because it's taken a little bit of pressure off that position and thinking that you're the guy that has to make all the plays. You're now in a position where when the play presents itself, go make it, but understand that you've got other people around you that can make those plays. And like you said, running the football, hey, gang up on us and running the ball. I'll take the one-on-one outside with Tay. Or if you want to play vanilla shell, we'll just hand it off to Lambert all day. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes. It's awesome having because Jonte has almost 2,000 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
And your defense has come along too. And that's been a thing that we had your guys' game against Carroll. And I felt with that game being a 28-20 loss for you guys, had you not made some critical mistakes such as offsides here and there and a couple costly penalties, and then getting the ball a couple times where you didn't get any points, that may have been a different ball game.
Mm-hmm. That was definitely the turning point of our season because after that, that's when we officially got our PAT unit together, and like that really changed the course for our season because even though we lost that game, I feel like it was a win mentally for us because it showed we could compete with anyone. Because our 2 losses in the year, we truly lost those games because of our own mistakes. Because you go back to week 1 against Snider, we have 2 dropped 2-point conversions because we were chasing a point instead of a blocked PAT off our first score. And then the Carroll game, we were in the red zone 5 or 6 times and had to force stuff because we weren't confident enough to kick field goals yet.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And Bohde, just talk a little bit, you came over. How does having guys like Tay Johnson to throw to and really Jonte Lambert in the backfield, just the whole host of that Northside team, how has that helped you develop this year as a quarterback, especially getting into the system and just kind of all coming together to form this great team that's had so much success?
It's awesome because when I first came over, I was like, I really had no idea what it was going to be like. And then when you have a guy like Tay, who is arguably the best receiver in the state, I think he is personally, everything he does is effortless and it makes you look a lot better than what you really are sometimes. And then when you have Jonte, he's insane because some of his runs, I don't know how he does that. So definitely it's just taking a lot of pressure off me personally because I know I have guys who can make plays around me and help me out.
How do you feel North Side as a whole? You talk about the we the North is kind of the mentality and you guys are, that Coach Johnson, we've had him previously on the show, talks about not just for football, but he wants that to kind of permeate all of sports and really all of Northside High School. The buy-in process for this team that has really struggled the last probably 5 or 6 years to see this turnaround. Talk about that and the progress that this team has made day in, day out, that maybe behind the scenes that aren't shown necessarily, that you don't see on Friday nights, that makes this team so much better in this last year.
It's definitely awesome because when I first came in, it was like everyone's like, okay, we've had the hype around us the past 3 or 4 seasons, but we haven't done anything with it. And then this year, it was just really the buy-in. Everyone's like, okay, we actually can do this. Like, we have a legit shot. And then after week 1, we were kind of like second guessing ourselves because it's like the same thing that happened the year before to the team with losing to Snider by, I think, 2 points it was again. So it was just like, all right, we had to bounce back. And then bouncing back week 2 against DeWinger, we're like, okay, like, let's go, let's win out. So then when we lost to Carroll, we're like kind of questioning ourselves again. But really after that, everyone came together and was like, we're still good. Like, we can go on a 6-game win streak and go into sectionals with a hot streak and just having the buy-in of the whole team. And then like the culture around school shifted once we started winning games. More fans started coming out, which really improved everyone's confidence.
Let's talk a little bit here, Bohde, moving ahead with your preparation for Anderson this week. What can you tell us about Anderson and their team that you guys are preparing for Friday night?
They play against a lot of defense, a lot of offenses that we don't see. They play against a lot of wing T, hard-nosed run teams. So really one thing, we're prepared to have to throw the ball a lot against them just because if they want to stop the run against us, we're going to make their DBs and secondary to stop our receivers. But really the goal is just to get the job done, keep everyone healthy, and hopefully move on to the next week.
Yeah, they run that specialty offense, I always said when you're facing those teams, you've got to get yourself either up a couple scores to pull them out of those type of offenses, to make them do things that are not comfortable for them. But sometimes your best defense is your own offense. So that's going to be a key component for you guys. Now, what have you seen from them defensively? Are they a team that likes to lay back and play coverage, or are they a team that likes to risk and gamble and bring some blitzes now and then?
They're definitely going to bring pressure, try to disrupt our passing game, which honestly I like that because it gives our receivers just one-on-one matchups across the board. Because they know if they sit back there and give me time, then we just dissect their defense, which I feel like, especially their box is definitely the most sound they have. So that's really the biggest thing we're focusing on, is stopping their box.
Now, you guys have got them at home this week, correct?
Yes.
You're playing them at home, correct, here, Bohde?
Yes.
Okay. Expecting a big crowd here Friday night from the faithful?
We expect it, but we're hoping to get it because it's a home game in sectionals, and then it's better than traveling there because you can hopefully get all the students there too.
Yeah. Well, hey, buddy, we thank you for coming on here tonight and really appreciate and been really impressed with what I've seen of you this year and your maturity as you have taken on the responsibility of being that leader on the field. I really like the way you play the game, and a pretty darn good arm. Before you let you go, how about recruiting wise? What's happening there in the recruiting area?
Right now I have Taylor University and Madonna University, both at NIA level, offered me, and I'm still talking to a couple other schools.
Okay. Well, let me tell you something. As an old retired college football coach and a guy that coached the position for a number of years at quarterback, there's a school about 30 miles due west that could use your talents. It's called Manchester University. And so if you need somebody to come pick you up and bring you over there, I'll be glad to do that. Okay.
Yes.
Well, Bohde, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on. And we wish you guys, the Legends, the best of luck this Friday night against Anderson. And we'll be keeping an eye on that ball game. Bohde Dickerson from Northside High School joining us here this evening. And like I said, dude, I'm very impressed with the young man. I think I like the way he's handled himself, and I think he's done a lot of great things and maturing. So I think they've got a chance to, have a good game Friday night against Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, here's a kid that, he really came in, he was the quarterback at Dwanger, and a little bit of a quarterback controversy there. Nevertheless, he comes in to Northside. My understanding is and we didn't have time to quite ask him this, but they played some middle school ball with some of those guys at Northside, maybe Tay and some of the others. So familiarity previously in middle school. So he gets in the fold there, and really, it really became an X factor for that team this year. And I think that's what's been so special about this team is for them to take that next step. They needed a player like that to help out and to really, because here's a guy that threw 6 touchdowns in a game, which is the school record, and then averages 200 yards passing a game. Jonte Lambert runs, he set the school record for a season in rushing yards. So this is a real banner year for Northside, best year since 2014. So they're just trying to continue that going. They welcome in Anderson in that sectional 12 in class 5A. So we're at the semifinal level. So the winner of that game will face the winner of Snider and Dwanger. And, I think it's a favorable matchup for Northside. Of course, they get the home game on top of it. And I think it should be a fun one Friday night, because just around the program, and you just know that it's a lot better feeling on where things are. And I think, that can go a long way, especially in some of these programs that, are just always looking to find their foothold. And Northside has certainly done that in the last year or so. And it's a testament to all the hard work those kids have put in, and the coaching staff and Coach Johnson and his staff. And it should be a fun one for them out there as they welcome in the Anderson Indians on Friday night. And another matchup in Class 5A on the other side of the bracket will be Snider and Dwanger. Snider will travel to Dwanger, and joining us now here on Upon Further Review, We go beyond the X's and O's with Snider head coach Kurt Tippmann. Coach Tip, thanks for joining us once again tonight. And I know that you guys had that off week as well. Just kind of talk to us about that. What does that look like when you go up right to the end of the regular season, you get that week off before you guys jump into postseason play? What does that look like for your program as you prepare for sectionals?
Well, it's actually, it's something that we've been used to. I think we first started it in 2013. When they first went from 5 to 6 classes, immediately, there was a bye in our class. So, this is the 9th year we've had it. And so we've gotten a pretty good use to it in terms of a schedule. We do things that we're continuing to do things that we like. Our goal is, number one, to rest up. You just finished a 9-game regular season in the SAC, and every team has bumps and bruises. And, for some kids, it's a time where they need to heal. And then for other kids, our big focus is just getting better at fundamentals. When you're in the course of the 9-game regular season, a lot of your week is consumed with game plan and adjustments, things that you have to do different, particular to the team you're playing that Friday night. And when you have a bye week, you can go back and really focus and hammer in on some of the fundamentals that, to me, are still the key to being successful each and every Friday night. And you can really focus on those things at every position, on your offense and defensive scheme. We try to film every session that we have to try and really get a good evaluation of it, and address some of those deficiencies that we've seen that maybe in the course of a game week you don't always have time to really, really hammer at those things. So that's what we use the week for. We had a really good week. We do a lot of other things, just team building things that we want to continue to do. Had our first, our team dinner on Thursday night where we all get together and something we traditionally do in the playoffs. So it's something that the kids look forward to. But we had a good week, and I think we're refreshed and ready to go with the next game week.
Sure. You guys line up against Dwenger. When you see that sectional matchup come out, is it better that you guys faced them towards the end of the season, just on October 7th, like 2 weeks ago, compared to playing them in the beginning of the season? How does that work when you guys in your game plan, as far as, lining up, the chances are good you're going to get an SAC squad in either Northside or Dwenger. You play Northside early, Dwenger later. Does that help at all to have played Dwenger so recently, or is it would be more of a preference that if a little time had gone by? How does that work for you as far as your game plan?
Well, I don't think we view it as a strength or weakness, because it's the same for both teams. I would say that playing them in week 8, there's not a lot of difference that's going to happen in terms of personnel and who they are in 3 weeks. But, I say that, and last year in week 8, we beat them by, I think, 11, and they turned around and blew our doors off in the sectional finals. So, it was a starkly different game. It is what it is. I don't know that we have a preference. We feel like we know who they are. I mean, with them being in our conference and playing them every year, it's a whole different dynamic in the playoffs when you're playing a conference team and everybody knows each other so well. You play them on the freshman, the JV, varsity, and, I don't think we're going to trick each other. It's just going to come down to fundamental execution. And there might be some different things that each team does here and there, but for the most part, you're going to get what, each team knows that they're going to do, and you just have to defeat it.
Yeah, Coach Tip, Shannon Griffith. And one thing that I think that you guys do so well, and you talked about it a little bit there, getting back to the fundamentals. I've always felt that Snider High School was probably one of the better teams that I've always seen, going back to the days when I was coaching and recruiting, that really honed in on fundamentals and developing kids. You come in this week, you've got a two-headed monster at tailback now. You got Buchanan and Level. I mean, talk about that dynamic duo that you have in the backfield offensively, and I mean, these are not small guys either. I mean, you've got both of them are 6'1", go 200 pounds, so they are some bruising running backs to have in the backfield, the type that I would say Snider loves to have for that counter power game.
Well, I mean, I think we've evolved over the last 7 to 8 years. When we get our choice is to have two guys that can share the load at running back. Last year, Tyrese did the majority of it, and his junior year really had to do the majority of it as well, and that was just because of where we were at. And last year, Langston shared some of that load and lightened it a little bit, but it also gets that younger guy some experience for the following year. So, through the course of the games this year with, Langston being injured or missing a game, Uriah had to take the load along with, Dial Capone. And that gained him some valuable experience. And then what we really saw is he excelled. So he took that opportunity and just went with it. I mean, really, really excelled in those situations, and to the point where like, well, we got to keep giving this guy the ball. And then, as Langston got back into his groove, and I think it really was the first Dwenger game that he finally felt comfortable being back into a rhythm. We went through a couple games there in the middle of the season where I think those guys each might have had 4 or 5 carries in a game, just because of the way the game went. We had a bunch of special teams touchdowns and some defensive touchdowns, and our number one offense may have only had 17 plays in 2 or 3 games. And so those guys, it was just kind of hard to get a rhythm. And I think that Dwenger game, he finally got in that and felt more comfortable. And then you could see him carry that forward in the Northrop game and then in the Lures game. And, we feel like both those guys are at a good place, sharing the load and understanding the offense and, using that offensive line to gain some valuable yards.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got a great young man at quarterback for you, Hoppert. And I've always been impressed with him because I always felt that he was about the team. He wasn't about, come over to the sideline shrugging or, sometimes that body language is that quarterbacks get, why aren't we throwing it or this or that? But talk about his leadership and how he has just really taken hold of your team offensively this year and just put you in a position that gives you everything you need for this coming tourney run and what he can mean to your football team. Because the kid, the second half of the season, I thought he was fantastic in what, with whatever you guys were doing, throwing it, being a guy that was directing the offense. Just kind of talk a little bit about him and his specialness to the football team.
Well, number one, he brings 3 years of starting experience to us. I mean, 2 prior years to this, and that's just something we've never had. And playing 12 games each of those seasons or 11 games, whatever it was, and having that experience to come to bring to the offense. I mean, he's seen all the different defensive looks that we're going to get. He's seen all the different coverages. He's been in the game situation where the game's on the line and he's got to make a play. He's been in that situation. He's been in the playoffs. And so you just can't replace or duplicate that kind of experience as it relates to leading the offense. And his voice in the huddle, when the coaches aren't there and it's those 11 guys in the huddle, that voice is calming and I think confident in our offense and helping our offense be productive. You mentioned being unselfish. I think every quarterback nowadays wants to go out there and throw it 40 times. And there are teams that are doing that.
Right.
But I think, you've been around long enough to know that when it gets this time of year, you better be able to run the ball.
Yep.
And if you're going to go deep in this playoff, if you're going to make, headway in 5A and 6A, you better be able to run the ball. You better be able to stop the run. And, we know that as a program, and Luke knows that because he's been in here 2 years, in those situations. And so he has no problem handing it off to Langston and Uriah. But what he has done in his unselfishness has allowed us to truly be balanced.
Yes.
And we've achieved that, and that's been our goal. But if we have to throw it 40 times in a game, he can do that, and our receivers are very capable of that. And that, that's going to come up. There's going to be a game. There always is. There's a game where they're going to take something away, and we're going to have to, do the opposite. And I have no problem. Our offensive coaches and our offense has no problem putting it in his hands 30, 40, 50 times if we have to win the game. And, I think he's getting better every week. The relationship and the rapport that he builds with the receivers and the tight ends every week in the passing game has continued to develop. And, it's just as much a weapon for us as it is handing it off. And that makes our offense dangerous.
Yeah. He's only thrown 2 interceptions by my last statistics, 12 touchdowns, I believe, on the year. That's remarkable. Number one, thrown it 109 times. I always say a good quarterback has to be a 60 to 65% or better to be an effective quarterback in today's game, just by the way it's designed. And then talk a little bit about the guys on the outside, Juarez, Billingsley, these 2 guys. You talked about it. You're going to face teams. They're going to say, well, we're not going to let Buchanan and Langston just run it down our throats. We're going to gang up and say, I dare you. But you've got the guys to say, okay, we can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, Kamari, it starts with Kamari, and he is a matchup problem. And, I think there's very few people that can lock on him and take him away. He's got great speed, number one, great quickness. And the other thing that he has that you just can't teach is just ball skills. When the ball's in the air, he has a knack to just, contort his body in a way that he comes up with the ball. So he's a deep threat, but he's also, you can't tackle him in a phone booth kind of deal. He's so quick and agile that he's just hard to get his hands on. And so he's a matchup problem, both vertically and in the horizontal passing game. And then Kedrell, is quicker, maybe not as fast in the straightaway speed. He might argue with that with Kamari, but he's just lightning in a bottle, and just an awesome kid, team captain. Wears the number 1 jersey for a reason. He's really the heart and soul of our team. The only 2-way player that we have. The only guy plays both ways, and he's dangerous. And then Jordan Lee, probably has 20 some catches and 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's on that 4x1 track team that those guys all run track in the spring, and all 3 of those guys are on that team, and Jordan's part of that. And, he's deceptively fast and can hit the home run also. But those guys have, they've been playing together for 4 years. They know each other, and they have a great rapport in the passing game, and they know the nuances of the passing game, and they always just seem to be on the same page. And here's the other thing. We've had talented receivers in the past, but they're only going to operate effectively and make our passing game really, really good if they also operate unselfishly. I mean, they got to block for each other.
Right.
They can't get disappointed when the ball goes one way instead of their way, and these guys have embraced that 100%. It really shows up in their blocking for each other. If we throw the ball short to Kedrell, Kamari and Jordan are just working their tails off to try to get him more yards. And if we throw the ball to Jordan and he scores, the first 2 guys to meet him in the end zone are Kamari and Kedrell and Lincoln, the tight end, who's another receiving threat also. Those guys are really, truly operating as an unselfish unit and are happy for each other and really want to see each other succeed just as much as they want to have success themselves. And that's the key to having a unified group and to be successful as an offense when the games matter most.
Sure. And your defense, Coach, 81 points this season, 35 since week 3 on, after 46. Doing the math. You're the math teacher. The math in my head off the top. Talk about that defense and what they've been able to do as this progressively get better, because it's been pretty remarkable to see what they've been able to do on the defensive side of the ball, especially in SAC play.
Well, we started out the year, we knew we were going to be a little light in terms of size on the defensive line. But to us, that kind of fit more of what we wanted to do schematically. I think when we joined you earlier in the year, we talked a little bit about that. And, sometimes you think concerning wise, are we going to get mashed at? Are they going to be able to just lock on guys and move them, in the interior? And is that going to cause problems? And I think what this group has done, at least with the front, has just been very good and sound with the movements that we're doing and still being gap sound. I mean, you can move guys all around, but if the second level along with the first level isn't gap sound, you're going to have all kinds of holes in the defense. So the first thing they've done is really be in tune with that, and we're consistently gap sound. But we use that speed as an asset, and these guys have embraced that. It only works if they're willing to put forth the effort, that maximum effort on every play. I mean, we got to have 11 guys running to the ball. And they've embraced it. We track our loafs, just like everybody else does on a Friday night. And it's the proof is in what we see on film. When we're not taking plays off and we're giving maximum effort on every play, good things happen, whether it be turnovers, tackles from the backside, just good effort plays. This group has done that. And so we've been sound. We're not making mistakes. We're not blowing coverages. We seem to communicate very well and get in you got to check things with the way offenses are and the different formations and motions and all the things that you see offensively. And defenses have to be able to adjust that. But to do that, they got to communicate well with each other and everybody get on the same page. And this group has done that. They've also had adversity. I mean, we've lost 3 senior starters on this defense through the course of the season to season-ending injuries, and that's adversity. 3 senior returning starters. It has just been tough, and young guys have filled in and done a remarkable job. We had another defensive lineman that was out and didn't come back and play till week 5 or 6, and that was a great addition to the group, and so they've had to overcome adversity, and that's a good sign of this group. But they fly around and have fun and are creating things on defense, turnovers and tackles for losses, and eliminating those explosive plays. And I think that's why you see some of the success on defense.
Hey, Kurt, expanding on your defense, because I think your defense is lights out. I mean, I think this year, in my opinion, some of the best defenses that I've seen in the Summit Athletic Conference, when you sit down and, you go through it, you got the Carrolls, of course, Sniders. I mean, the Northside's defense in some respects is a little underrated at times, but talk about your linebacking core, because to me, those guys, and, you got this Rohrbacher kid that he is a kid that I watch him and he's your typical linebacker. He sees the gap open and he shoots it. I mean, he's the kid that's very instinctive.
Yeah, and he's quick. Again, speed is his asset. He's not a big 225-pound guy, but he's quick and he's physical. So for the size that he is, he's very, very physical. And our other linebacker, Zion, is very much the same way. Very athletic and very physical. Linebackers got to be able to stick their nose in there and take on a guard's block. And get off that block and fill that gap. And, those guys have done that. We've played with undersized linebackers in the past, and we've been hurt because they weren't able to be physical in the interior, on an inside zone scheme or a gap scheme where you're getting a puller in your face, or, even a 2-back scheme where you're getting a lead block in there. And those guys have a great combination of both the speed, but also the toughness and the willingness to go in there and blow up a gap with the levers that they're supposed to distort the offense in the manner that you want to as you defend the play and defend that gap. And, on the perimeter with Nick Talamentes, Dante Sanders, those guys have done a good job on the perimeter, just defeating blocks and, again, being gap sound. So, we feel good about our linebackers. They've been very active. Both Zion and Lucas are our 2 leading tacklers, which, to me, you want your linebackers to be your tacklers.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done that in the design of our scheme.
Well, and the other young man that you have, and it's important in what you do structurally as a defense, because you ask quite a bit of your, what I call your rover position, but, Logan, the sophomore, he's a kid that, he sticks his nose up in there too. I think he's got like 52, 53 tackles on the year, but he's also got 2 INTs. So here's a sophomore that's stepping into a pretty big role within your defense. He's played pretty well this year.
Yeah, I think our biggest improvement has come in our secondary play over last year. And Brandon's part of that. Austin Ganaway and Levi Overholt are our 3 safeties. We like to use 3 safeties a lot, put one of them at kind of a nickel spot and use some of those 3 safety personnel groups. But all 3 guys are willing to stick their nose in there, and they're good cover guys as well. And Brandon, certainly the sophomore, the younger of the 3, but man, I don't think he's missed a tackle here in the last three or so games. He's just very good at coming downhill, coming to balance, keeping leverage, but also keeping his feet going and being able to tackle guys on the run as they cut back or bounce, which typically what safeties see is they come down in there to get their nose in stuff. And he's been really good. And they're all 3 ball hawks back there in the secondary. Brandon has 3 picks, and I think Levi has 2, and Austin has 2. So they kind of, roam around back there, and we ask a lot of them. We're playing a lot of different coverages to try to change things up for these really talented quarterbacks that we see week in and week out. And they've embraced it and done a really, really good job of it. And also just commanding the defense, getting guys lined up where they need to. Austin's really the leader in that. Kind of the quarterback of the defense, and especially in the second and third levels, getting the coverages set right, adjusting to the motions, and putting us in good positions, to operate effectively in that third back end.
Last question for me, and then Doot, you can finish it up after me. But looking at DeWanger, I have a ton of respect for Coach Garrett. I think he's a very good offensive-minded football coach. And, they lost their, starting quarterback, and he brings in a young sophomore. Couple games, he's up to speed. Now you head into the tourney, looking at them, what are some things that you look at from a head coaching perspective, talking a little bit about the broader picture, offense, defense, and special teams when it comes to this matchup against DeWanger?
Well, anybody
without giving out too many secrets.
Anybody that's ever played or coached in this game knows that it's a battle every time you strap it up.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I am fortunate to be a part of this game every year. It's just a special game. It's a special game. We have a tremendous amount of respect for Bishop DeWanger, their program, their history, and the way they play on Friday night. And anytime you take for granted or you think lightly about how they're going to come out and hit you in the mouth, you're in for a long night. You're in for a long night, period. They will battle till the end. I don't care what the score is, good, bad, or otherwise. I don't care what their level of talent is. They are going to fight their tails off every inch that they can to be successful in that game. And, they do a lot of things on offense. Lots of formations, lots of plays, lots of route combinations. And they have weapons, I think CJ Davis is as good as any receiver in the conference. And, the Minix kid is also very talented. The Steele kid, they use 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah.
They have 3 huge tight ends that they use effectively. And so the same personnel group, they can get in, 2 tight end, 2 running backs and mash it at you. And then that same personnel group, they'll get in empty and chuck it all over the park. And then they'll do all kinds of things in between. So they're very tough to defend with all the weapons that they have. But I don't care if they're an empty or 3 backs. When the ball's snapped, they're going to come off the ball in your face. And you better be prepared for that, or it's going to be a long night. And that's the issue that they pose on their offense. And defensively, the same thing. They play as hard as any team that we play in our conference. They will run downhill and hit you in the mouth. They're doing some different things in the secondary that are kind of unique and that you don't see other teams doing with a kind of another 3 safety kind of hybrid player in the Davis kid who's all over the field. They utilize him in a lot of different ways and put him in different places. And then he's so fast to the ball. A lot of times you think there's a hole there and there's something going to happen. And the next thing you know, 7 comes and tackles you. And you look and it's a 2-yard gain. So, they're very, very aggressive. They're very, tough and physical in every aspect. And they have a very good kicking game. They have a good punter, very good kicker, and they're very good in the kick game, as they always are. And, as you mentioned, Coach Garrett and their staff does a great job. They're well coached, but their kids play hard. And you got to be ready for that every time you play them, or you're going to have a long night.
Certainly. Well, Coach, we appreciate you jumping on for a little while to break down your season here on Upon Further Review and get ready for the big sectional matchup with the top-ranked Snider Panthers against 10th-ranked Bishop Dwenger. And we thank you for joining us tonight, Coach, and taking some time out of your prep. And good luck on Friday, and we'll see where things wind up as sectional playoffs roll on.
Well, thanks for having me, guys, and appreciate all you guys do for high school football in this area.
Certainly. That was Snider head coach Kurt Tippmann joining us. And Shannon, that's a big one. I mean, there's at this point on these matchups that we're going to see in the sectional semifinals and on are big matchups because everybody's playing now, all 6 classes, and you see these geographical matchups that are interesting. Then you see this old-fashioned SAC game that is in the middle of the sectional playoffs. And for 4A, we'll talk about that, a lot of NE8 games, and it's just, you can't overlook your opponent. Snider beat Dwenger 28-0 3 weeks ago, but as Kurt Tippmann just mentioned, you can never overlook the Bishop Dwenger Saints.
No, and like he said, Coach Garrett's a good tactician, and he's going to take what they did against that game, find out what, kind of were the issues and problems. Sometimes it's personnel that you just don't match up well enough, but he'll figure that out and figure out a game plan that will take advantage of what he has on the table and try to confuse Snider defensively and, utilize CJ Davis. CJ Davis can change a game offensively or defensively. And you heard it there from Coach Tippmann. And I've said it all along, even when I played back in the 80s, the Stone Ages, the one thing you knew when you played Dwenger, you better strap it up because they will hit you. It's one of those things that it starts in their CYO leagues and carries all the way through. They will hit you. Same thing with lures. They will hit you. And that's the thing that, you get into these games. And like you said, a year ago, same thing happened. Controlled them pretty much in the game during the year, went in the tournament, and Dwenger came in to Spooler Stadium and beat them. So it's by no means a walk in the park. And that's a tough sectional when you look at it. You've got that one. And I didn't want to look ahead and say, hey, what ifs and stuff like that. But you look at the games that are presenting there, potentially, whether it's Snider or Dwenger and potentially facing off again with Northside, boy, that November 4th game could be a dandy because you've got 2 teams that Northside struggled against one, as Bohde was talking about, and then got a late victory on the other one. So this sectional 12, I think, is going to have a lot of good football Friday night, and then actually for the championship as well.
Yeah, that's just one of the many great games. And Coach, with the remaining time, I think we want to kind of go through some of these sectional semifinal games.
Plenty of time, dude. Plenty of time.
Plenty of time. We'll start with the big guys since they're starting this week. Last week we started with 1A and made our way up through 4A. This week we'll go ahead and start in Class 6A. And let's go back one more sectional. First of all, sectional 2 and 6A1, we got Carroll traveling to Penn and Elkhart traveling to Warsaw. Boy, oh boy, right off the bat for the Carroll Chargers, a big one as they head to the Mishawaka area and play perennial powerhouse Penn, Coach.
Yeah, and this is another sectional that's going to be dynamite, some good high school football. And if people are within the area, want to get out to a game, especially up in, whether it's over at Warsaw to catch that Elkhart Warsaw game or head up on to Penn, You're not going to find a better environment for high school football than Penn High School. But looking at this one, Sagarin has got Carroll the favorite of this sectional with an overall rating of 90. So they're about an 8.5 point favorite against Penn. But that is a tough dynamic up there to go play in. Now, I couldn't track down a lot of Penn statistics, unfortunately, but we all know what Carroll can do. Their defense is dynamite. They've got guys that can make plays all over the field defensively and then offensively. The thing there is, Jimmy Sullivan, can he continue the year that he's had even with a week off with a young player? I think it will be good. And then you've got, Starks, you've got, Hirschberger. I mean, we can go right down the stats there, but there's no question that Carroll is primed in this sectional to do great things, and they're going to have the toughest road because they potentially will play 3 on the road games all through the sectionals.
Yep. And looking at Penn, the last 4 weeks, they've given up 10 points on defense.
Right.
And Penn's a team that plays a really solid schedule. Indianapolis Cathedral, Cincinnati St. Xavier is on there. They did play Elkhart, which is part of this sectional in conference play. So, Penn is that typical team as well, giving up 12.4 points a game and averaging 28. So I think there's a little bit more offensive firepower for Carroll, but certainly 2 stout defenses that this time of year you really need that. And then looking at Elkhart and Warsaw, two fantastic teams at 7-2. Warsaw just coming up a little bit short in their conference race in the NLC, the Northern Lakes Conference. And Elkhart, just by virtue of the tough schedule they play in the Northern Indiana Conference, along with conference champion Penn, they finished 3rd place in the East-West division. So for them, They missed out on a little hardware, but looking at their, they have a potential because that game against Elkhart and Penn was a 20-21 finish that final that Penn won. So not to look too far ahead too, because these are all great games, but with Class 6A and 5A, there's 32 teams that are in each of those conferences. So it does get to be a little bit spread out in these sectionals. And so, that's why Carroll goes to Penn and Warsaw faces Elkhart. And then if we fast forward to sectional 3, we've got Fishers and Northrop and Homestead and Hamilton Southeastern. So long trips for Fishers and then a long trip for Homestead down to Hamilton Southeastern, 2 teams in Fishers and Southeastern, just north of Indianapolis in Hamilton County. And so these are Northrop, I think it's going to be a long night for them against a powerhouse like Fishers. But that Homestead Hamilton Southeastern game becomes an interesting one as Homestead, off a 5-4 season, travels to number 1 Hamilton Southeastern.
Well, 2 weeks is going to be beneficial for Homestead to prepare for Hamilton Southeastern. But again, I don't think they will have the firepower that Hamilton Southeastern will have. And that's a tough game to play on the road. But having 2 weeks to prepare definitely is going to help them a lot. What's going to have to be their favor for Homestead, they're going to have to play perfect football. They're going to have to gain turnovers and possessions to give themselves a chance there.
Yeah, those 2 teams playing the Hoosier Crossroads Classic. Hamilton Southeastern was your conference champion. Fishers finished middle of the pack, 4-3 in the conference, along with Westfield and Zionsville, Noblesville in that category as well. If we look ahead now to, we talked a lot about the 5A sectional 12. Anderson comes to Chambersfield to face the Northside Legends. We talked to Bohde Dickerson early. The only sub 500 team in this sectional is Anderson. So I think it looks good for Northside. And then Snider and Dwenger, we talked about it all night long, just an old fashioned matchup. Snider won in the regular season 28-0 just on October 7th. And so a big shutout for them. These 2 teams met twice last year. Snider won the regular season and Dwenger won the sectional play. Dwenger getting to regionals before losing, I believe it was to Zionsville in that regional. So let's go ahead and move on to sectional 19. 4A, this is probably the most intriguing sectional
Yes, it
of
is.
all of them because we have so many local teams in this one. And if you look at who came out of last Friday night, we have East Noble went on the road and beat Angola, so they move on. Leo took care of Southside, but it came down to the final minutes there. I mean, Southside by every account, no doubt about it, played their best game of the year. And Leo had to get some late stops and a little bit of scoring magic to advance there. So that will be an NE8 rematch from earlier in the year that Leo squeaked out a 28-21 win. So that's going to be a fun matchup as the Knights look to continue their season and get a little revenge from their regular season loss, Coach.
Yeah, and looking at the East Noble game against Angola, pretty well even across the board. Now, Angola's had some injuries and some bumps and bruises, but again, Luke Amstutz, good coach, opportunistic, and he will always have his teams ready to play. And this game against Leo Friday night is kind of the rematch of last year's contest where East Noble thought they had Leo beat, and Leo scored in the last minutes, coming out and throwing the football all over the place because they were behind, and everybody thought, they're in trouble. And Leo went down the field and scored. So great matchup there. What can you say about DeKalb? I think we've talked about Tegan Irk forever. He made a play that he needed to make, prior to set that up.
Yeah.
New Haven had thrown a pass to Mylan Graham. He got hit and they ruled it a fumble. Now, I know there's some controversy surrounding that, but that was the turnover that led to Tegan's touchdown. And ended up happening was he just scrambled in from 40 yards out and there was no defenders around. So really weird way that happened, but that's the type of kid that kid is, that he can make plays. And Columbia City Friday night, we'll have to be aware of that, but they're playing so well right now. Yeah. Offensive, defensive, and special teams. I think they're a team on a mission, and I look for Coach Fox to have them prime and ready here at home, because this place is going to be a great atmosphere Friday night here in Columbia City.
Yeah, DeKalb definitely probably with the upset of the night, so to speak, really. And really, New Haven was kind of primed for that because they had been on that winning streak, and it was always that question of what New Haven team would we get. Late stages of that one, DeKalb holds on, and another NE8 matchup in the sectional semifinals. Columbia City has played close games all year long, which I think has benefited them versus some of the other teams that when you blow out and then you have to play this close game, it makes it a little more difficult. Really one team from our area in sectional 20, Huntington North. They get by Muncie Central, so they're still playing, and they get to host one. They welcome a very good Mississinawa team out of the Three Rivers Conference, and I think it's probably a little bit of a tall order now for Huntington North, but you get that one sectional win, you feel a little bit good, you get a home game, and, this is why you play in October. You never know what can happen, but here we are, Huntington North still playing.
Yeah, and that atmosphere in Huntington North there on Friday night is going to be jumping because of what they have to offer in terms of facilities and stuff. But again, I think they got healthy. They were beat up against Norwell. They probably got some kids healthy. And again, with what Coach Prescott does offensively, it's going to give them a chance. And that's a tough offense to have to prepare for in a 2-day window. So that always will give them a chance. Now, whether they have enough gas in the tank to go get Ole Miss, we'll see. Now, the thing about this sectional, the winner of this sectional championship will meet up against the Columbia City sectional for the regional. And this Kokomo team is the team that came into Leo and really stole one, because if we remember right, Leo was winning that ball game, and then Kokomo found a way in the second half to just take it over. But Kokomo is odds-on favorite. And we'll see what happens on Friday night.
Yeah. Kokomo and Western, the other side of that bracket, two conference champions that, not conference champion. One is Western, the old Howard County rivalry down there in the Kokomo area. All right, moving along here, our next sectional in 3A, sectional 26. Again, one area team, West Noble, a big win over Mishawaka Marion last week. They're still continuing to go. They face up against Knox that rolled past Lakeland, and West Noble, a strong 8-2, took their lumps maybe midway through the season, but a team that has a chance of continuing to get far in this tournament.
Yeah, and they have to go to Knox, so that'll be a tough assignment for them just to go and travel over to Knox. So this will be, all pretty good matchups. The Jimtown Jimmies, always a tradition rich program. If West Noble would get by Knox, that ball game could be a dandy up in Jimtown on November 4th. But West Noble, I think they're a team that, again, like you said, it took some of their lumps early on. Now they got themselves rolling and a chance to get to the sectional finals here in another week.
Sectional 27, a lot of area teams here. Norwell and Concordia in the top half of the bracket. Concordia squeaks by Woodland, Coach, in a kind of a quarterback duel between Eli Maddox and Woodland's quarterback, Jake Snider. And Norwell just rolls right past Heritage. Another sound, dominant victory for them. Norwell looks like they did not let that Columbia City loss affect them too much.
No, it just made them mad. So they had a chip on their shoulder. So they took it out on the Patriots, and now the cadets get to play them down. They get them at home. That'll be a good thing for them. Norwell, we've all talked about it all year. They're a team that's built for a potential run in this sectional, in this bracket. And the game that could be the game, though, is if Norwell wins the Yorktown game, being that it's down at Yorktown, that will be a heck of a matchup for sectional championship. So you can see some of these brackets shaping up to some really good sectional championship matchups.
Yeah, I think Yorktown, coming off their big win over a very good Muncie Delta team, now lining up against Garrett, which benefited from the ping pong balls and getting Belmont. I think Yorktown takes care of Garrett, no problem. To Garrett, 3 wins in the last 4 games after an 0-6 start. So, something kind of turned a corner a little bit there, and they've got some momentum heading in to what will eventually become their offseason. But there's some good work by Chris Depew and crew down the stretch in Railroader country. Moving on real quickly, sectional 35. A game that we're going to talk a lot about on Friday night because we will be there for the 1380 game of the week. Bishop Luers travels to Cherubusco in a big 2A tilt. This could be, I don't want to say this is the sectional championship because East Side's on the other side, but this one could really determine a lot of things here because, the style that both of these two teams will play come Friday night.
Yeah, this is could be a quarterback duel. Stansky and Riley Burhoff. And Burhoff's a kid that has made a lot of things happen here as the year went on. He's a mature kid now. I believe he's a senior. And, this will be a good matchup up in Busco. Great environment. We'll have a great time up there right around the corner from me. So it's a short trip, which I like. But I know they're fired up that we're coming to Busco to do their game, and this will be a dandy. And then of course Eastside gets Manchester again. I think they've got the easier draw of all of them, but again, another November 4th potential really good bracket for a sectional final.
Yep, I believe that would be if Luers and Eastside advance, and not to discount Busco. I think that would be the 3rd year for those two teams meeting up in a sectional final. So that's become quite the rivalry if we get to that point. Sectional 36, Bluffton beat Blackford pretty handily. They now go to Tipton. Those two teams, that should be a Donnybrook of a game out in Tipton County. And then moving on to sectional 44 real quick, South Adams and Adams Central, another rematch, this time in the ACAC play. This probably is your de facto sectional championship at this point, Coach. Maybe Madison Grant might say something about that too.
Yeah, but Madison Grant's at 8.
The last 2 state runners up coming out of this sectional.
Well, and this is going to be a great matchup. Coach Grant Mosier will have his Starfires primed and ready. Again, he knows what it's going to take to beat them. I mean, that's the thing. He knows what it's going to take to beat them. And I was talking to Coach, kid that played for me, that's a coach at Garrett actually, and he was the one thing he wanted to talk about was Adams Central and how a small program gets 90 kids out, and that just tells you the tradition that's there. So,
that's fantastic.
Great ball game down in Adams County. If you're on Highway 27 and you want to know where all the traffic is, it's probably off to your left there at Adams Central High School, because everything will be shut down in Adams County for this ball game, and it will be a great atmosphere for the South Adams versus Adams Central.
And we got to say, impressive win for Adams Central over Southwood. That was a game that a lot of people circled that maybe the Flying Jets could get tripped up. They steamrolled the Knights, and that's basically what Adams Central has been able to do all week, all year. On the other side of that bracket, Madison Grant travels to Northfield. Northfield got by Southern Wells easily. Benefit of that draw. I think it's a little bit of a tall task now hosting Madison Grant Argyles. And Coach, we talked about it. We'll be at game of the week. We'll be down at Cherubusco this week, up at Cherubusco, really, for Lures. They come in for the 2A Sectional 35 semifinal. Game starts at 7, kickoff on 1380 The Fan with you and Brett. Before that, the 6 o'clock PSM High School tailgate show, and then the post-game show at the Pine Valley Pizza Hut. We're in the thick of it now, Coach. It's going to be an exciting game up in Busco, Turtletown, this Friday night.
Yeah, right around the corner, like I said. And I'm going to have to talk to Rump about the Pizza Hut at Pine Valley, because that's going the opposite way for me to take the gear after the broadcast. So we're going to have a little conversation there, because, he'll want to get out of there quickly so he can go have a little bit, get ready for the show with Adam. But no, great. It'll be a great environment, good time. I'm glad to be back after a week hiatus doing things for my day job. And, homecoming was great at Manchester. Unfortunately, the Spartans lost in double overtime to the Bluffton Beavers, 46-44, if I remember serves correct. But dude, I think it's going to be a great week. And again, I think we're setting up for some great sectional finals here in another week. So a lot of good football ahead of us.
Yes, certainly. And just one quick reminder is before we wrap up here, follow us and subscribe on our Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter page, YouTube page, anywhere you get podcasts. Find Upon Further Review SAC. That's the best way to find us. And then if you want to listen on the old-fashioned radio dial, every Wednesday at 8 o'clock on 1380 The Fan and 100.9, a rerun of this podcast. We thank 1380 and the folks over at Federated Media for doing that for us. And well, Coach, another week in the books, another week of a more exciting football to come. And I think it's time to head out and get ready for another Friday night of exciting football.
You got it, my man. And it's been a pleasure joining you once again.
All right. Well, we thank Kurt Tippmann, head coach of Snider Panthers, and quarterback Bohde Dickerson from the Northside Legends. Thank you for joining us tonight on Upon Further Review. We'll see you next week, and have fun at all the games that you go out to this Friday night.